It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Welcome to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Now listen, if you live in the city of Hazleton, don't build anything, don't remodel anything, don't buy anything until you check with zoning. My guest today, we have Charles Pedri, who is the Hazleton zoning officer, and Inspector Tino, Nocchi, and they're going to tell you about zoning laws that have changed, and it's important. So to save yourself aggravation, mostly, and money, please pay attention to this show if you live in the city of Hazleton. Charlie and Tino, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Okay, now zoning. Okay, it's interesting. How did the city or you come up with all these changes, and hopefully they're for the betterment for the city? I'm sure they are, but how much planning was done here to make these changes?
Well, there was significant planning. What happened was we had an ordinance that was passed in 1995. Naturally, there's a lot of uses, a lot of conditions, and everything else that was changed since 1995. This was about a 3-year process. So about 2 years was just in the planning stage of getting the ordinance together, revising and everything else. Then we had it on public view for about a year. And then finally in September of last year, 2021, we passed the new zoning ordinance. So the new zoning ordinance is in effect a 3-year process of bringing everything into the 21st century, okay? Because at this point in time, we have new issues and new ways of dealing with things that were not present in 1995. So, and in addition, the city council and the mayor looked at it and said, well, which area do we want growth in? Which area do we want changed and which area has been changed basically with regard to growth? And because of that, they rezoned some of the areas.
Okay, now looking at these zoning areas, as I said, the best thing here is before anyone does anything in terms of either purchasing, if they want to build apartments or if they want to put a business in, or remodel, major remodeling, not inside painting. You're talking about
correct.
They should definitely contact City Hall, okay, and review with you what they want to do. Is that correct?
That's correct. The main thing is zoning is what's called land use. That is, are you going to use this land? So the first thing we want to look at is, does your potential use, say for example, I want to put a business in downstairs, I want a multi-service type of business, and upstairs I want to have an apartment for myself and my family. Can I do that? So we have to look at where is the property located. So if the property is located in a commercial zone, either a central commercial zone, which is a CC zone, you can see that on the map, and also or a CH zone, a commercial highway zone, that's an allowed use, okay? If you're looking at another area, say it's in a residential area, in an R2 or R3, at that point in time you would apply for zoning, okay? And then I would have to deny it because I couldn't grant that commercial operation in the residential area, and you would have to file an appeal with the Hazleton Zoning Board, okay?
But here again, you know, sometimes people say, well, you know, you think the city is trying to dictate to how you should live your lives. That's not the case here at all, okay? I think this is for the betterment of the entire city of Hazleton. Is that correct?
Yeah. The function of zoning is to make sure, like for example, you don't want an industrial zone right next to a residential zone, okay? So our industrial zones now are next to commercial zones, etc. So it's a situation when we look at it, we want to make sure that that use is proper within a particular zone. Similarly, if you live in a residential area, you don't want a commercial car garage across the street from where you live, okay? And that's the situation would have to, you know, unless it's there and it's what's called a non-conforming use, it's been there for a long time, they'd have to apply to the zoning board.
Okay, so in terms of the zoning map, okay, we're going to put a map up, all right? And as they're looking at this map, explain to the public what we're looking at on this map.
What you're looking at the map are the exact zones of the city of Hazleton. So that shows like R1, which is the single-family residential. R2 is the medium-density residential. R3 is the high-density residential. It also shows commercial highway and commercial central commercial area, and in addition shows where the industrial zones are. So it shows what the potential uses are in those particular areas.
Okay, so if I have an idea that I'm going to go into commercial, okay, I would look at this map and I could see at the map, this is where the CH is or the CC. I would be comfortable if, without, you still has to be reviewed. Yeah. But if I'm planning on doing something in those areas, it would be, most likely that I would be able to do it.
Correct. And what the mayor and city council did in this situation is they increased the locations for commercial. For example, the Alter Street was commercial highway only from Diamond Avenue to 15th Street. They now increased that from Diamond Avenue, and they changed the zone to a CC, Central Commercial Zone, and that goes all across not only Alta Street, but also all the way across Diamond Avenue. On Church Street, they changed it. It was basically residential. They changed that to a CH zone, Commercial Highway Zone, from Diamond Avenue all the way to 22nd Street. Mm-hmm. So those are.
What does that mean, commercial highway?
Commercial highway is any commercial operation. For example, you can have a multi-service, you could have a car dealership, you could have a car repair garage, you could have a car wash, that sort of thing. They're all commercial highway. That's all of Church Street now, okay? They've also added up in the Poplar Street area, a CC zone. The commercial, the main street of Poplar Street was our businesses, etc. They've increased that. What they're saying is that we want to have more commercial in this particular area.
Okay, looking at this here again, a lot of planning had to be involved. You just didn't decide, well, we'll do this. It wasn't throwing a dart and wherever it landed, that's what happened. So again, I want to reinforce to the viewers, particularly for the people in Hazleton, that this was well planned. And it's for the betterment of the city of Hazleton, okay? Now, when we talk about other areas, okay, when you say discussion of apartments, does that mean if I'm thinking of buying a place and I, like you said, I want to put apartments upstairs and I want to put a business downstairs, okay? That apartment has to fall in to one of these zones.
Correct. Now, and apartments we have some problems with as to, for example, right now we have a rental registration. So the first thing we want to do is check if the owner, the seller of the property is going to sell that property, he's going to have rental registration. So let's say, for example, he has rental registration for 2, and the person comes in and he says, yeah, I was just there, but he has 4 apartments, okay? So what that means to us is that he had 2 apartments, he or someone on his behalf illegally put in 2 additional apartments, and then that means that he's not in compliance with zoning. So they would have to get a non-compliance or a notice of violation on that issue. Okay?
So what happens? I mean, to get what do you do? I mean, you fine them or what?
Yeah, no. What you have to do is you have to send in we send out a notice of violation. That means that you're in violation of the zoning ordinance. You have to bring in an application into zoning, and then you have to go through the procedures. What's changed in our new ordinance is once we're changing, if it's 2-family, you're probably okay. If it's going from a 2-family to a 3-family, that's what's called a multi-family unit, and because of that, conversion to a multi-family unit requires a variance from the zoning board, okay? And the reason for that is we've had so much problems in the past with people just putting apartments into places. The demand for apartments are significantly high, and because of that situation, we're trying to keep a handle on that to see what we can do, make sure there's off-street parking, make sure everything is in compliance.
And looking at this, there's other areas here, off-street parking, okay? How does that affect someone who has a residential versus apartment? You need to get zoning, if you're going to put parking in? Yeah.
If you're going to put off-street parking in, like a driveway in the back to make room, you have to still get zoning. That's usually an allowed use, and there's no problem with that. The problems that we find is that people want to put additional apartments in their properties, and because of the fact that there is no off-street parking, they have to make off-street parking. Right now, it's three spaces for every one new unit. So it's if you have, say you have 2 units and you want to add a 3rd unit, you have to make sure there's 3 additional off-street parking places. The reason for that is that we've had, especially in the northwest section and the northeast section, there's significant problems with parking. And because of that, you know, like parking's at a premium. And we want to make sure that if we have new additional residential units, that there's initial residential off-street parking for those units.
So is it safe for me to tell the residents of Hazleton that before they buy or before they sell something, that it's best to check and see with zoning, particularly if I'm going to sell a building and you want to buy it because you want to put something in it? Well, I certainly want to sell it, but when you get there, you may find out that you can't do it because zoning is going to prevent you from doing that.
Correct.
So here again, it's for the betterment of both buyer and seller,
right.
Correct?
Right. And the problems we have on the seller side is usually the fact that well, at some point in time, we have residential rental registration for 2 apartments, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 apartments. Okay, so the seller we'd have to come in and say, you'd have to, in order to bring those up to code, you have to make sure you get zoning. Similarly, for the buyers, it's very important because they're going to put money into the purchase of it, but then there's going to be more money allocated. For example, if they're putting additional units in, they may have to go to an architect or engineer to get us plans so that Mr. Nocchi could look over those plans, make sure all the fire and safety issues are taken care of. And he'll talk more about this. Like we must have like interconnected smoke alarms, etc. You know.
So okay. I bought a building, I didn't pay attention to zoning, I invested about $50,000 into the building, I put this in, I put that in, I put apartments in, I put a business in, I'm ready to open, all of a sudden you find out that, wait a minute, you can't get a permit or whatever.
Correct.
And he broke, or she broke every regulation in zoning.
Correct.
What do you do?
At that point in time, we send out what's called a notice of violation and saying you have 30 days to come in. And they have to come in and they have to file a zoning application.
So you know you're going to deny it because they broke off. So what happens?
Well, we may not necessarily deny it. It may be an allowed use, okay? Yeah. But if it's not an allowed use, say, for example, it's a business in a residential area, then we're going to deny it, then it has to go before the board. Okay.
Even if you're buying a place, if you're buying an apartment or you're buying a home, you want to make sure that what you want to do with that place, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, that it meets the zoning requirements. Now, I know it sounds complicated, but let me tell you, the best thing to do, we're going to give you the information here. We go back, we'll talk to Tino on what his position is as inspector, but the most important thing to do is check with zoning before you do anything. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7, SSPTV.com. You get to watch all of our shows, the 21 locally neighborhood-produced shows that we provide for your enjoyment. Today we have Charles Pedri, who is the Hazleton zoning officer, and we have Tino Nocchi, who is the inspector. And this is for the city of Hazleton only. There was a new zoning ordinance passed in September 9, 2021, changes, all for the betterment of the city. And it's important that you pay attention, especially if you're buying or selling. Now, Tino Nocchi is the inspector, right? Okay.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, like what qualifications you have to be an inspector.
Well, first off, I've been a building inspector since 1997. I've been in my own personal business in construction for 20 years. I'm retired from that. I've did code enforcement work for 15 years. And for the last 17 years, I worked in the Lehigh Valley as a state certified inspector. And I hold all the state certifications that are required to be a UCC inspector.
With that background you have, tell us what, you know, what your standards for construction or major repair, what should people be doing?
Well, if they're going to do any kind of renovation work or anything that's going to change something structurally or change the footprint of something like an addition or change the inside of their dwelling or commercial, like a commercial fit out, they should have plans drawn. Residentially, it's not customary that they have to get an architect or an engineer as long as they provide plans that are legible and they show the structural details and give me the information that's needed for the UCC compliance. Commercially, they all need plans. They got to have plans to show what they're doing commercially.
Okay, so who do we go to first? Do we go to zoning first, or do I go to you? If I have plans, do I review them with you before I go to zoning, or?
They should always go to zoning first, because if they're changing a footprint or changing a height of a structure, that's always zoning. And there's also uses. There's uses in zoning that go by the zoning ordinance, but there's also uses in the building code. Like if I got a B use group, that's a business. That's like a doctor's office, a dentist, a multi-service. If I got an S1, that's a warehouse facility. So there's different designations that are used for the use, because that, when you go by that use, that determines how you're going to build that structure or remodel that structure.
All right, so would it be safe for me to say, look, I have a current building and I want to do some things, so just to get a preliminary opinion, you know, I could, can I call you and say, Tino, I'd like to show you something, my plans, before I go to zoning, and you may say, well, you know, based on what I could see here, you know, it's best that you don't go to zoning until you do this, or could you give me advice on those plans before I go to zoning?
Well, Charles and myself, we share the same office, so we work in cooperation with each other. And I have done zoning, so I've got an idea what's required. So if somebody needs to ask a question, I'm willing to answer those questions and lead them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's what I do for the city of Hazleton. So.
And so we go back to what I asked Charles before, was the fact that this didn't happen overnight. You've said you have a long years of experience, okay? So you looking at it from, you know, the betterment for the city of Hazleton, and this is what this is all about. It's to improve the quality of life in the city of Hazleton. Do you feel that when you reviewed this from your experience, you were hands-on, that this is a good thing for the citizens of Hazleton? It is a good thing, because the zoning and property maintenance deal with the quality of life. The building code, or the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code, deals with fire life safety of occupants or the public. So it is required, and it is for the betterment of the community, but the UCC was passed in 2004, in April of 2004, and one of the major reasons was because of FEMA. FEMA required the state to come up with a statewide building code in order to get FEMA grants, because people were going in and building things substandard. I see, I see. So here again, I want to stress the fact that, you know, we paid a lot of attention to this, and, you know, the way you see it, it'll really help develop the city of Hazleton. What areas are, from your inspections that you've been going around the city, what are the most troubling things that you see that people should have paid attention to? Some of the most troubling things are when they convert homes into apartments, and they have shared corridors and stairways, and they don't put in fire doors. So one fire from one apartment can communicate to another apartment, and then next thing you know, the whole building's engulfed with flames. So that's why there's standards that are set to save a lot of lives, to save lives, and keep people safe and get them out of the building in a safe manner.
a stairway and a corridor that's shared, the safe harbor's in the stairway and the corridor, not the apartment, because the fire starts in the apartment and the fire door keeps the fire in the apartment, so people could exit the building in a safe manner.
Boy, and it's a shame when some people take shortcuts and
well, yeah.
It ends up costing lives, etc. Folks, I'm talking to Charles Pedri, who is the Hazleton zoning officer, and Tino Nocchi, who is the Hazleton UCC inspector. It's for your good. It's for the city of Hazleton. This is all good stuff, my friends. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks, 24/7, ssptv.com. I can watch all of our shows. Today, my guests are Charles Pedri, who is the Hazleton zoning officer, and also Tino Nocchi, who is the UCC inspector for Hazleton. This is strictly for the residents of Hazleton. Zoning laws was changed September the 9th, 2021. What are some things in closing you'd like to tell the viewers at Hazleton?
Well, the main thing we want to say is that our office is open every day, okay? So that if you have a problem, and our website's available also, if you have a problem, go on the website, come into the City Hall, talk to us. We are there to provide information to people. My function and my perspective is that we're consumer friendly. You know, we want to be as much as helping the individual residents of the city of Hazleton in order to make sure that what they want to do is proper, number one, and number two, has the proper procedures to follow. You know, we're also, as Mr. Nocchi said in his presentation, we're also concerned with the safety and the life safety of the community, and that's the reason why the council has adopted the Uniform Construction Code, which means that we follow the procedures that are necessary in order to make sure that the apartments or any other business or anything else that's going in is done correctly, number one, and number two, done within the framework of protecting the individuals and protecting, you know, members of the residents of the city of Hazleton.
Tino, what would you like to say to the people in Hazleton in your perspective as an inspector?
Well, I'd like to tell them the first thing they should do is do their due diligence. Whenever they're buying a property or whenever they're going to renovate, information's always for free. So they should come in and do that, and I think that the apartments are a big thing, because we make sure they have interconnected smoke detectors so that all tenants and all units are notified at the same time in case there's a fire breaking out in one of the units. So the building code has made that people are allowed to do things if they follow certain prescriptive standards that are there, because they're allowed to use the existing building code too. Because if I was building something new today, in most cases you need a sprinkler system. So if you're doing something in an existing building, you could get away with trade-offs, fire alarms or firewalls, by isolating square footages and keep them in a smaller compartment. So that's what they need to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned something about fire alarms before.
We have what's called, what Tino enforces, what's called interconnected fire alarms. That could be a Wi-Fi system, doesn't have to be a hardwired system. And that means that where the alarm goes off in one unit, it goes off in all units. So because of that, you know, say it's a four units in that area, and the person in the back doesn't know anything about the fire until, you know, as soon as that alarm goes off, everybody knows about it.
Smart.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I'm hoping that you, the viewers, particularly if you live in Hazleton, or if you know people who live in Hazleton, advise them of the new zoning law. It's very simple. You just call them at 459-4960, extension 605. We'll put that number on the screen. And tell them what you're going to do, and or go in and review with them, and they're more than happy to give you the correct information. Thanks for coming on the show and bringing us very important information.
Thank you for allowing us to give this information to you.
I have to tell you, folks, this is Dave Pedri's father. That's how he's known as.
That's my claim to fame.
We'll see you next time.